Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, yeah. Good morning. Ooh. It's a new day.
Today's a new day.
Good morning, my friends. Today is indeed a good day. I can love you and be your friend, even if we think differently, believe differently, act differently, look different, or come from different places in life. You are welcome here. With that in mind, let's get our day started together. Testing. Good morning, my friends. We are now in day 24 of our 365-day reading plan to read the whole Bible. Thank you for joining this morning. We're going to be going through part of Genesis 47 and 48, part of Matthew 16, part of Matthew 17, and then part of Proverbs 3 today. So it should be a good morning. So let's start in Genesis 47, chapters 13 through 31. And I'll be reading from the NLT English translation. Meanwhile, the famine became so severe that all the food was used up, and people were starving throughout the lands of Egypt and Canaan. By selling grain to the people, Joseph eventually collected all the money in Egypt and Canaan, and he put the money in Pharaoh's treasury. When the people of Egypt and Canaan ran out of money, all the Egyptians came to Joseph. "Our money is gone," they cried, "but please give us food, or we will die before your very eyes." Joseph replied, "Since your money is gone, bring me your livestock. I will give you food in exchange for your livestock." So they brought their livestock to Joseph in exchange for food. In exchange for their horses, flocks of sheep and goats, herds of cattle and donkeys, Joseph provided them with food for another year. But that year ended, and the next year they came again and said, "We cannot hide the truth from you, my lord. Our money is gone, and all our livestock and cattle are yours. We have nothing left to give but our bodies and our land. Why should we die before your very eyes? Buy us and our land in exchange for food. We offer our land and ourselves as slaves for Pharaoh. Just give us grain so we may live and not die, and so the land does not become empty and desolate." So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. All the Egyptians sold him their fields because the famine was so severe. And soon all the land belonged to Pharaoh. And for the people, he made them all slaves, from one end of Egypt to the other. The only land he did not buy was the land belonging to the priests. They received an allotment of food directly from Pharaoh, so they didn't need to sell their land. Then Joseph said to the people, "Look, today I have bought you and your land for Pharaoh. I will provide you with seed so that you can plant the fields. Then when you harvest it, 1/5 of your crop will belong to Pharaoh. You may keep the remaining 4/5 as seed for your fields and as food for you, your households, and your little ones." "You have saved our lives," they exclaimed. "May it please you, my lord, to let us be Pharaoh's servants." Joseph then issued a decree, still in effect in the land of Egypt, that Pharaoh should receive 1/5 of all the crops grown on his land. Only the land belonging to the priests was not given to Pharaoh. Meanwhile, the people of Israel settled in the region of Goshen in Egypt. There they acquired property, and they were fruitful. and their population grew rapidly. Jacob lived for 17 years after his arrival in Egypt, so he lived 147 years in all. As the time of his death drew near, Jacob called for his son Joseph and said to him, "Please do me this favor. Put your hand under my thigh and swear that you will treat me with unfailing love by honoring this last request. Do not bury me in Egypt. When I die, please take my body out of Egypt and bury me with my ancestors." So Joseph promised, "I will do as you ask." "Swear that you will do it," Jacob insisted. So Joseph gave his oath, and Jacob bowed humbly at the head of his bed. Genesis 48. One day, not long after this, word came to Joseph, "Your father is failing rapidly." So Joseph went to visit his father, and he took with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. When Joseph arrived, Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to see you." So Jacob gathered his strength and sat up in his bed. Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me. He said to me, 'I will make you fruitful, and I will multiply your descendants. I will make you a multitude of nations, and I will give this land of Canaan to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession.' Now I am claiming as my own sons these 2 boys of yours, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born here in the land of Egypt before I arrived. They will be my sons, just as Reuben and Simeon are. But any children born to you in the future will be your own, and they will inherit land within the territories of their brothers Ephraim and Manasseh. Long ago, as I was returning from Paddan Aram, Rachel died in the land of Canaan. We were still on the way, some distance from Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. So with great sorrow I buried her there beside the road to Ephrath." Then Jacob looked over at the 2 boys. "Are these your sons?" he asked. "Yes," Joseph told him. "These are the sons God has given me here in Egypt." And Jacob said, "Bring them closer to me so I can bless them." Jacob was half blind because of his age and could hardly see. So Joseph brought the boys close to him, and Jacob kissed and embraced them. Then Jacob said to Joseph, "I never thought I would see your face again, but now God has let me see your children too." Joseph moved the boys, who were at their grandfather's knees, and he bowed with his face to the ground. Then he positioned the boys in front of Jacob. With his right hand he directed Ephraim towards Jacob's left hand, and with his left hand he put Manasseh at Jacob's right hand. But Jacob crossed his arms as he reached out to lay his hands on the boys' heads. He put his right hand on the head of Ephraim, though he was the younger boy, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, though he was the firstborn. Then he blessed Joseph and said, "May the God before whom my grandfather Abraham and my father Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this very day, the angel who has redeemed me from all harm, may he bless these boys. May they preserve my name and the names of Abraham and Isaac, and may their descendants multiply greatly throughout the earth." But Joseph was upset when he saw that his father placed his right hand on Ephraim's head. So Joseph lifted it to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. "No, my father," he said, "this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused. "I know, my son, I know," he replied. "Manasseh will also become a great people, but his younger brother will become even greater, and his descendants will become a multitude of nations." So Jacob blessed the boys that day with this blessing: "The people of Israel will use your names when they give a blessing. They will say, 'May God make you as prosperous as Ephraim and Manasseh.' In this way, Jacob put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Then Jacob said to Joseph, "Look, I am about to die, but God will be with you and will take you back to Canaan, the land of your ancestors. And beyond what I have given your brothers, I am giving you an extra portion of the land that I took from the Amorites with my sword and bow." Matthew 16, verses 21 through 28. From then on, Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem, and that he would suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but on the third day he would be raised from the dead. But Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. Hold on a second. Sorry, having a little issue with the video feed. It'll be back. But Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. "Heaven forbid, Lord," he said. "This will never happen to you." Jesus turned to Peter and said, "Get away from me, Satan. You are a dangerous trap to me. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? For the Son of Man will come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and will judge all people according to their deeds. And I tell you the truth, some standing here right now will not die before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Matthew chapter 17. 6 days later, Jesus took Peter and the two brothers, James and John, and led them up a high mountain to be alone. As the men watched, Jesus' appearance was transformed, so that his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as light. Suddenly, Moses and Elijah appeared and began talking with Jesus. Peter exclaimed, "Lord, it's wonderful for us to be here. If you want, I'll make 3 shelters as memorials, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." But even as he spoke, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my dearly loved Son, who brings me great joy. Listen to him." The disciples were terrified and fell face down on the ground. Then Jesus came over and touched them. "Get up," he said. "Don't be afraid." And when they looked up, Moses and Elijah were gone, and they saw only Jesus. And they went back down the mountain. As they went back down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, "Don't tell anyone what you have seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." Then his disciples asked him, "Why do the teachers of religious law insist that Elijah must return before the Messiah comes?" Jesus replied, "Elijah is indeed coming first to get everything ready. But I tell you, Elijah has already come, but he wasn't recognized, and they chose to abuse him. And in the same way, they will also make the Son of Man suffer." Then the disciples realized he was talking about John the Baptist. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 1 through 10. "My child, never forget the things I have taught you. Store my commands in your heart. If you do this, you will live many years, and your life will be satisfying. Never let loyalty and kindness leave you. Tie them around your neck as a reminder. Write them deep within your heart. Then you will find favor with both God and people, and you will earn a good reputation. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend upon your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. Don't be impressed with your own wisdom. Instead, fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Then you will have healing for your body and strength for your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the best part of everything you produce. Then He will fill your barns with grain, and your vats will overflow with good wine. I really enjoyed the reading this morning. Enjoy seeing how God provided, not just in through Joseph to the Israelites, but how He provides for us. I really enjoyed seeing how when Jacob blessed Manasseh and Ephraim, it wasn't necessarily the way that Joseph wanted it or thought it should be. But that should teach us something. And that parallels how Jesus corrected Peter for seeing things the wrong way. Peter thought that the pain and suffering and horrible martyr's death that Christ was saying that he was going to face was bad. He was seeing it wrongly. Similar to how Joseph saw wrongly who he thought should get the preferential blessing. There's a difference between seeing the way that the world sees and the way that even our feelings see things and seeing them the way that God sees them. God has the perspective of all eternity. We see just a sliver, just the moment and the situation we're in. We can't even see all of the situations of the people around us. Sometimes to make the most wise decisions. But God sees it all. He understands why, the purpose behind things that we don't yet understand. I also love, I heard someone talking about the moment of transfiguration, right? When Jesus is on the mount and we see Elijah and we see Moses there with him. And I heard someone talking about a point of just conjecture, just consideration, just questioning, that for me gave me a good perspective of how God sees everything. We sort of talk about God not being inside the world, but He is in it and through it and even beyond the world that He created. And if He created time and all of these things, that God is timeless. Well, this conjecture that this person was talking about with the transfiguration was, what if Jesus on the mountaintop with Moses and with Elijah, and this is a little bit confusing, so I hope it doesn't confuse anyone. But for me, it helps me try and understand God's perspective on everything and how it's so different than man's. He said, what if that moment where Peter and James and John, who were with him, saw Jesus with Moses and with Elijah on the mountaintop, that those were actually, and you heard God's voice, right? That was all for Jesus and for God, one moment that passed through all of those times. so I'm not very good at explaining. But when Moses received the tablets on the top of the mountain in the Old Testament, and there was a finger that wrote the law in the stones that Moses received, right? We know that account on that same mountaintop. And we know the account of Elijah on the mountaintop. What if all of those moments, what if that was Jesus in that moment, and his finger was what was writing on those tablets? And that transfiguration, that moment of amazing transformation that we hear this account of, that it was all somehow together, right? It was all or even if it was just a vision of sort of how God can see it all and it can all be intertwined. And it was just like this account is like a vision of that, to give us that that attempt at understanding what is not understandable. We don't have a concept of how can that moment over there and that moment over there and this moment right now all convene and be happening at the same time, or at the same, not the same time, but how can they interact, right? But this is how God sees and interacts, and his perspective on it all. He knows it all. He's aware of it all. He's working in and through it all. So that was a very interesting thing to me to see. We know that God's ways are so much higher than our own, and there's so many things that we just cannot comprehend because we're limited in our perspective, right? We're only, we're in this world, but we are not yet in all of heaven. And some of that, because of our lack of perspective, might have us like Peter, thinking that we're saying something wise or nice, and we're not understanding. Similar to how Joseph wanted to correct his father when he was giving the blessing to the other son. But no, Joseph said he knew what he was doing. So many times in life, we may try and do it our way. And this can be a mistake. This can be, even if we have good intentions have caused all kinds of horrible things because we don't have the full perspective. Some of humbling ourselves is realizing that we are not God, that we do not know all of this, that we do need someone that we can reach out to, that we can seek wise counsel from, that we can say, Lord, lead us in your way. Your way is best. At best, my way might be good. It's probably hinging on not good, but for the grace of God. So that is what really is calling to me in this study this morning. I love you, my friends. I hope you have a wonderful day. If you need anything, if I can be of any assistance, Lord, help us to seek you and to seek your way. Help us to love one another. Help us to be just and fair. Help us to show mercy. And help us to walk humbly with you today. Lord, I'm reminded of Matthew 25 when you tell the parable of the sheep and the goats. And you say, when I was a stranger, you befriended me. When I was hungry, you fed me. Lord, help us to see those around us who are in need of help as an opportunity for us to love you by loving them. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. Have a great day.